I hope you're well. So back in last year's gift list video, I ended it with a Bambu Lab A1 mini 3D printer as my wild card if you're feeling indulgent kind of option. It was on special at the time at about 140 quid or thereabouts. And I said back then that I'd do a walkthrough of how to set the printer up from scratch if anybody was interested. I had a good response to that, but only realized recently that I'd never actually got around to doing that walkthrough. So I thought it was probably about time that I did. I've never actually set one of these up before. And I'll be honest, I've never used one either, and I am pretty new to 3D printers myself. So I'm going to be taking it slow and steady, working my way through the instructions to get it all up and running, partly because it's a budget printer and partly because of its open design. There's a bit more assembly of the components to do. I've already taken it out of the box and I've got all the bits and pieces, all the parts laid out and ready to go. There's a little box with the accessories in it, all the Allen keys and machine screws that you need, and everything is clearly marked. First job is to remove the 4 screws that lock the Z-axis limiter in place. It's a bit like taking out the transit bolts in a washing machine, but much, much smaller. Z-axis is the up and down movement, by the way. Then cut the cable tie around the print head, and there's some foam packing to remove from under the print bed too. There are 3 screws under the heat bed that need to be tightened. And then you can slide the purge wiper unit onto the slot on the X-axis, that's the side-to-side arm, and fix that on with a tiny machine screw. Next is the spool holder base plate and arm. Then connect the filament inlet, any one of the 4 it says. Connect the filament inlet to the filament guide. That's on the end of the cross arm. There's also a little cable clip to keep the tube and the data cable together. Then hang a filament spool on the holder. You don't get one included with this printer, so bear that in mind. And then feed the filament through the PTFE tube to the print head. So this is where you need to connect the printer to a power supply to get things moving to the next stage of the setup. And this is where I'm going to do something a little bit different. Rather than just plug it in like normal, I'm actually going to use my Bluetti power station. The reason for that is that one of the most common questions I get whenever I talk about 3D printing or 3D printers is how much power do they use? And truthfully, I've got no idea unless you've got some sort of specialist gear like a clamp meter, or if you're on a smart meter and you can isolate the power draw, like running it only at night when there isn't much else happening. It's actually quite hard to judge. Hopefully though, with a combination of this and the Bluetti app, we'll be able to see the power draw on the battery or the display, of course, once it's done printing. So I've got to say the screen is really bright and clear, better than on my P1S printers anyway. So you connect to Wi-Fi. Once that's connected, you download the Bambu Handy app, register and log in if you haven't already done so. Then follow the instructions on the screen to complete the initial calibration. So initial setup done. We used a negligible amount of power. I ran the app while I was doing it, and it was like 20-25 watts or thereabouts. So I'm running the standard Benchy test print. This is normal for all sort of printers, comes installed on the printer's internal memory. And while that print's going to tell you a little bit more about this Bluetti power bank. Now you might have seen my previous workshop video where I used the Elite 300 portable power station to run my SDS drill to clean up with the vacuum and run my dehumidifier and power the lights as well, all while the mains power was off in the new space. This Elite 300 can put out over 3 kilowatts on demand, but it's barely any bigger than the 2 kilowatt models. Bluetti do make bigger and more powerful units than this, and smaller models too. But this one is probably the sweet spot between power, size and weight. When the power's back on, you can charge this up off a standard UK socket in under 3 hours. And there's an optional solar panel kit as well if you want to go fully off-grid. You can also monitor and control your power station from the smartphone using the Bluetti app, where you can set up timers and schedules. And while there's lots of obvious outdoorsy uses for something like this. It could also be an easy way to get power to your workshop or shed at the end of your garden without digging it all up just to lay a cable. Add the solar panels to your purchase and you can have a garden, room or workshop free from any future bills or price hikes too. I was at the Maker Central show recently, and one thing that did occur to me was that you could use this if you have a stand at a trade show or an event. Those show organizers really like to charge you top money for having power in the stand, and something like the Bluetti Elite 300 could easily keep you going for the weekend if your needs aren't too heavy. And as well as the two standard British square pin 230 volt AC sockets, there's something like another 9 outlets to choose from, including a pair of USB-Cs and some specialist ports for your camper van or caravan. I'll link to the full spec in the description down below, but it's hard to imagine anything that you couldn't comfortably run from a portable power station like this. And I've got to say, I've just thought of something else that I could use this for when I get the new workshop up and running. Maybe we'll get to revisit that later in the year. I've said before, power cuts, power outages are generally pretty unusual where I live and work, but having a power source on hand that can keep a freezer full of food from thawing, as well as you getting on with your DIY or indeed your 3D printing, would be extremely useful, especially on a longer overnight print that would be devastated by a power cut, no matter how unusual they might be. Well, that's probably not a bad idea. So if you're interested in seeing what Bluetti's power station solutions can do for you, you can check them out with a link in the description down below. And thanks so much to Bluetti for letting me take a look at this one. So that's our test print just finished, as you heard, and it's all looking pretty nice, I've got to say. While that build plate cools down, let's take a quick look at the power consumption on this. I'll overlay this on the screen so you can see it. So it starts off peaking while the heating is on, around about a couple hundred watts, drops down to about 98, and then it fluctuates a little bit, 92. Let's see if I can fast forward this a little bit. Yeah, it goes down to 85, 82, down into the high 70s, and then it jumps up to 223 again. Obviously, that's where the heater kicks in, but when it's just printing, it's in around about sort of 80 to 90 watts of power actually being used, and then periodically it spikes to a couple of hundred watts. So not massive, but certainly something to bear in mind. I'll just pop the print off the plate and take a closer look. So yeah, very nice. No issues there at all. That's basically how you set your printer up to make your first test print. Obviously, you can explore the models that come preloaded on your printer. This scraper is particularly handy, and you get the blade included in the accessory kit as well. Or there are models that are freely available on the Bambu Handy mobile app or through Maker World in Bambu Studio, the desktop app. You can model, slice and print from here as well. Let's take a look at something that I showed at Maker Central this year. This is a hinge drilling guide. This will be along shortly. You can just, drag that onto your build plate. It comes in the right orientation. You can slice that, make sure you've got your right printer and filament set. You can slice that. And print it from here as well. All good. So yeah, that's the basics of setting up a 3D printer from start to finish. Remember, this is the first one of this particular type that I've done, that I've set up, and I bought my first 3D printer only about 18 months ago. I've only been using CAD to design things for about a year, less than that probably. It's really not that complicated to do. Let me know in the comments if you'd like to see an absolute basics of CAD video. But I'll wrap this one up for now. Thanks ever so much for taking a look. As always, leave a comment, hit subscribe, and I'll see you next time. All right, take care.